Hi friends, it's Julie. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with a reading check-in video for you guys. Some of you know the books that I've read recently and go over what I'm currently reading. So I'm going to go ahead and say it again. I haven't filmed one of these in a while. I'm pretty sure that's how I start every single one of these videos. But honestly, I just have not had time to film. Life has just been so incredibly busy. And now the girls are out of school, so I can't film during the day anymore. So I finally bought myself a new light so I can start filming at night again because my lights broke when we were moving. But I have missed talking books with you guys, so I'm really excited to be sitting down and filming. The last few months have been kind of weird reading-wise for me. I've really enjoyed like everything that I've read, but I haven't been reading like my usual fantasy or horror. But I'm changing that, as you guys will see when I talk about what I'm currently reading. But let's just talk about some books. So the first book I just quickly want to talk about is Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this book because I feel like everyone and their dog has talked about this one, especially last year. It was like super popular, but I kind of understand why. I actually really enjoyed this. I listened to it on audio and I thought the audiobook was done really well. I loved the narration and I literally like laughed out loud multiple times while listening to this book and getting Eleanor's like inner dialogue. But in this story, we are following a woman named Eleanor, and she's very just odd. She's like socially awkward. She has a hard time like connecting with people. She has a hard time making friends. And in this book, she ends up meeting this man at work and they start a friendship, and we kind of watch that grow over the course of the book. And we also watch as Eleanor remembers some like really traumatic things that happened to her in her past that she's kind of suppressed, and we watch her come to terms with those things. And I honestly think that it was the trauma and stuff like that in this book that made me enjoy it as much as I ended up enjoying it, because the heavier subject matter I feel like really just added to this book, because honestly I thought it was just going to be this light, fluffy, chick lit read. And so when there were some heavier themes thrown into it, I just was very pleasantly surprised, and I ended up enjoying it so much more than I think I would have if they wouldn't have been in there. I do want to say though that trigger warning, I don't usually talk about like trigger warnings because you guys know I just read some really dark shit anyway, and this book isn't dark, but I went into it expecting it to be this like light, fluffy read. And while there were moments where it was light and fluffy, there was also lots of, we follow Eleanor as she's going through like a really deep depression, and she has suicidal thoughts and things like that. So I feel like it could be triggering for some people if they don't know that those elements are in this story. But like I said, I really enjoyed it. I thought the audiobook was done really well, and yeah, I would recommend it if it's been on your shelf for a while and you haven't picked it up yet. I think you might be pleasantly surprised like I was. Then the next book I finished was Son of the Shadows by Juliette Marillier. This is the second book in her Seven Waters trilogy, which is also like a bigger series. You guys know I've talked about this book, well, I've talked about these books quite a few times on my channel, and that's because like I've just fallen in love with Juliette Marillier and her writing. Like I think she's going to become a new favorite author of mine. I don't just want to say that because this is the only series by her that I've read, and I feel like I need to read something else before I can say, oh, she's a new all-time favorite author. But I just love her writing so much. It is just so atmospheric. Like, it took me a while to get through this book, and that's because I was reading it slowly and just enjoying it. But every single time I put it down and I pick it back up, like her writing just sucks you just right back into the story, and I'm right there in Seven Waters, and I can just envision it all in my head, this like beautiful forest in the Irish, like in Ireland, and there's just so much Celtic folklore, and I just love this. I love this so much. I can't wait to read the third and final book in this trilogy and then continue on with the series. And I do think I'm going to pick up, I think it's down here. Yeah, I think I'm going to pick up Wolfskin by her after I finish out the Seven Waters trilogy. This is a Viking story that she's written. I think this is going to be my next read of hers after I finish this, just because I love everything Vikings. But I don't know, guys. I feel like Juliette Marillier is just so under talked about, so under hyped, especially here on BookTube. But I feel like when people discover her, they like fall in love with her. So yeah, I just want more people to read her books. Her writing is just incredible. And then the next book I read is a super hyped book right now, and that was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And surprisingly, I really enjoyed this, which I was really shocked about, guys, because you guys know that I don't usually like super hyped books, but the reason why I picked this one up was, well, number one, they had it for free on Scribd, so I could listen to the audiobook, and I'd heard wonderful things about the audiobook. It's a full cast, and it was just done really, really well. But, so yeah, I got it on Scribd, and then also I heard that Taylor Jenkins Reid got a lot of her inspiration for this book from the band Fleetwood Mac, and Fleetwood Mac is one of my all-time favorite bands, and actually after reading Daisy Jones, I like went down this Fleetwood Mac like rabbit hole where I just wanted to know every single thing about the band, how they came to be, all of their backstories, just everything. And it was really fun. It was super fun, but you can definitely see that she got a lot of her drama and inspiration from Fleetwood Mac. So if you're a fan, you might really like this book. I don't know. I really enjoyed it though. I thought that the interview format that it's told in was really interesting, and I think it worked really well on audio, so I do recommend the audiobook if you're going to pick this up. Like I said, it has a full cast, and there were a few times though at the very beginning when you're getting used to everyone's voice where people would talk and you wouldn't know 100% who was talking, because sometimes they wouldn't introduce themselves, but you know, as the book goes on, you get to know all of their different voices, so it doesn't really become an issue. But yeah, really enjoyed it. My only other criticism of it was I hated Daisy Jones. I hated Daisy Jones as a character. I thought she was terrible. Not that she was a terrible person, but I hated the way that she was written. And Stephanie from That's What She Read talked about this a bit when she read this book. And I just completely 100% agree, because it was the same feelings I had. But at the beginning of the story, you are told over and over and over again how cool Daisy Jones is, how beautiful she is, how special she is, how rare she is, just over and over and over again. So as a reader, you're not allowed to you know, make those assumptions for yourself. You're just told over and over again how you should feel about Daisy Jones. And it was just very annoying. And I know that Daisy Jones is supposed to be the Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac, and I love Stevie Nicks, and so I don't really think that that's a connection there, because yeah, I just really didn't like her as a character, but it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the book, because I honestly just loved all of like the sex, the drugs, the rock and roll, the making of the album, just everything. Oh, and I don't think I even told you guys what this book was about. I said it's told in interview format, but it's about the band Daisy Jones and the Six, and they were a fictional band that made one amazing album and then they broke up. So throughout the book, we're interviewing the band members, and we're finding out how they felt about certain situations, why they think the band broke up, you know, yada, yada, yada. And there really isn't some like big twist at the end, but yeah, overall, enjoyed it. I understand why it's getting so much hype, but I hated Daisy Jones. Hated her as a character. Then the next book I picked up was another super hyped one, and that was Searcy by Madeline Miller. I've been meaning to read this book since I got it for Christmas, because you guys know I loved The Song of Achilles when I read it last year. And honestly, I really loved this book too. I was so pleasantly surprised, because I honestly went into this with super high expectations. Like, I didn't mean to, but I did, just because I loved The Song of Achilles so much. And everyone has been like raving about this book and how much they love it even more than The Song of Achilles. And while I loved it, it didn't quite hit The Song of Achilles mark for me, but it's really close. Madeline Miller is a new all-time favorite author. She's an auto-buy author for me. I just love her writing so much. And in this story, we are following Searcy, who is the daughter of the sun god Helios, and he had a sea nymph for a wife. And all of their children, I think they had 4 children, they were all witches of some kind. Like, they had magic. They could perform magic, like from plants and different things like that. And each one of them has different abilities. But Searcy comes into her powers later, and she ends up using them against people, not intentionally, but her father Helios and Zeus decide to send her to this deserted island where she's supposed to live out the rest of her days in solitude, so she can't hurt anyone else, but she's free to pretty much practice her magic and kind of, you know, hone her gifts. And I really enjoyed this. I honestly think, though, that I connected to this story so much because I'm a woman. I really think, and a mother too. I really think that this book is geared more toward a female audience. Not that men can't enjoy it, but, you know, we watch Searcy as she's on this island, and mortal men come to her shores, and she falls in love with some of them, and eventually she gets pregnant and has a child, and that becomes a big driving force for Searcy. And so I just connected to her so much because I am a mother, and so I do think that women will connect to her more as a character, but still the writing is fantastic. My only real criticism of the book would be that at the beginning of the story there is a lot of name dropping, and I feel like if you don't have any background of Greek mythology, like at all, like just bare minimum, that it might be a lot of names just kind of thrown at you all at once. I do have some previous Greek mythology knowledge, like not a lot, but enough, and so I knew certain people and they're talking about, I knew some of the gods and their powers, things like that. Not to say that you can't read this book if you don't have any background on it. It just, there's a lot of name dropping at the beginning, but you will figure out who everyone is, and yeah, it's just beautifully written. I cannot wait for her to write more books. Then after finishing Searcy, I was in just a Greek mythology mood, so I decided to pick up The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. And I really, really enjoyed this book, guys. I've been hearing mixed things about it recently, so I was a little nervous to pick it up, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was dark, it was brutal, it was beautifully written. It's way different than Madeline Miller's writing, but I really, really liked it. I listened to this book on audio, and I thought the audiobook was done really well. But in this story, we are getting, the first half is told from the perspective of Briseis, who was a queen of an outer city of Troy. And during the Trojan War, the Greeks set up camp outside of Troy, and they would go around and pillage the villages and kill all the men, kill all the pregnant women, because they might have sons, and they would take all of the women as slaves. And Briseis was a queen of an outlying city, and she was taken and given to Achilles as his prize. And we follow Briseis as she is experiencing life in this camp, and just all of the terrible things that are happening to the women around her. So the first half of the story is just told from her perspective, and then the second half we get most chapters from her, but then we also get a few of Achilles sprinkled in. And that was a lot of people's big criticism, is they didn't feel like we should be getting any from Achilles, that this is called The Silence of the Girls, it should only be about the women. But honestly, I thought it added a lot to the story, and it didn't make me feel bad for Achilles or anything like that. That was another criticism, that we were made to try and feel bad for Achilles and all of the horrific things that he did, and I did not feel that way at all. Achilles was a terrible person in this book. The way that he is written, it is terrible. He did absolutely horrific things, and while we can kind of understand a little bit of him and his mommy issues and things like that, never once are there excuses made for the horrific things that he did. But yeah, this book had some really hard to read scenes in it. There is rape, there is murder, there was just a lot of female brutality. But I feel like it was so realistic. I feel like, compared to the Song of Achilles, where none of this is really mentioned, I feel like it was so much more realistic in the way that it was talked about and the horrible things that happen to these women, because this is what happens. Think about the Vikings and all of these things, how they would go and pillage these villages, and what would happen to those women? Not good things. And yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed this, and I would recommend it. I'd recommend it if you like Greek mythology retellings and you're looking for something a little bit different after reading Madeline Miller. In my heart, I still think of Achilles and Patroclus as they were portrayed in the Song of Achilles, just because it's just way more sweeter to think about it that way, and not Achilles as he was in The Silence of the Girls. But yeah, really enjoyed it and would recommend the audiobook. So those are all the books that I've read recently, and right now I'm currently reading 2 books. The first one is If You See Her by Anya Alborn. This is her brand new book. It just came out in May. I bought it right away. Usually I don't buy brand new releases, but I just love Anya Alborn so much. You guys know that. And this is actually a haunted house story, and typically I'm not the biggest fan of haunted house stories, but if she writes it, I'm probably going to love it. I love her writing. I love her characters so much. I'm already connected to the characters in this book, and I'm only 100 pages into it, or maybe 70 pages into it, but so far, really good. I can't wait to see where it's going to go. And yeah, I love her books so much. She is my all-time favorite horror author. And then the other book I'm currently reading is Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. This is an adult fantasy novel that was really popular a few years ago. And I believe the final book in this trilogy comes out this year, like in a few months, which is good because I hate starting like a series or a trilogy and having to wait so long to finish it because I have a really hard time remembering things. So I like when a series is almost done and then I can start to read it. But so far I'm really enjoying this. I'm about 45 pages into it. I don't know too much. It's too much about it. It's like darker in theme. Like the main character is this girl who's training to be an assassin. There's lots of like murder, stuff like that in it. And yeah, so far I'm enjoying it. I'll see where it goes, and if I like it, then I will continue on with it. But yeah, those are all the books that I've read recently and what I'm currently reading. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. But I think that's it for the day, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all again very soon. Happy reading.